Carl's microphone is now live. We're going to do this now. Everybody else's microphone is also live. Let's do this. Hello, welcome. It's Sunday. Saturday. I'm lying to you. It's not Sunday at all. It is Saturday, isn't it? My week's just been so on fire, I've lost track of the days. It's Art of Rock, and today we're talking about vocal processing. If you want to do me a really huge favor, keep following Art of Rock, specifically on the Twitch, because everything else seems to be being hacked or cancelled or closed down. But you can always rely on the Twitch. Also, hey, this is brought to you by Angelspit's Patreon. If you want to help me out, jump on that. Believe me, you will be helping me out. Another fantastic Patreon to keep an eye on is, actually, just before we get to that, the Industrial Incisions playlist. If you're looking for new fantastic industrial music on Spotify, it's there. Go get it. Follow that stuff. And if you want non-stop music for your brain, MTV TV. It's the place. There it is. They also have a Patreon because we've got to keep these guys going. Booyah! Right there. And it's fantastic. And I just want to start on the great question today of vocal processing. This is such a huge, enormous expanse of question. And I love the enormous expanse of question because it makes me feel happy within myself and my pants. Vocal processing in your pants is very important. Right, let's go. What do you got? What do you do? How do you use it? Is it gear you go to? Is it distortion? Is there something beyond blah, blah, blah that you can do that's fun and awesome for vocal processing? I'm throwing it open. I could talk for hours about this, but I know Rezi's got some great ideas.
I can't find my hands up button today. I want to start with the source.
Can I ask you straight up?
Yeah.
How much compression's on your microphone?
I don't even know. It should be 0.
Really? So your voice sounds naturally that sexy.
Well, I try. No, there's two things. This is exactly the topic I was about to start, though. Like, proximity of the mic makes more difference than the actual type of mic. Where it's placed in relation to your face is the key. Because the room and the resonating and vibrating parts of your anatomy and where the production of the voice comes from, like mic position and the room around you, how they interact with your source are, I mean, if we're putting distortion on it and, you know, pitch changers and stuff and then making it sound not human, it starts mattering less to some extent, but it still interacts, it still interplays. If you've got a really thin, ambient, echoey room with a huge peak from the screens that are too close to your face, and that tone is baked into your sound, it's really going to come through the whole way. So no matter what processing you put on it, you're still going to have that evidence, that fingerprint. And these are decisions, you know, like in my mind, not rules. But if you want that, like I can think of a lot of Kate Bush vocals that have a sound of the space in it. Like there's just this strange mid-range tone peak and sound of a room that you hear in her louder notes. And then there's like maybe an ogre vocal, which sounds very upfront and like just voice, and you don't hear room in it because of the treatment that they do after it. So there's this huge range of decisions to make there, aside from even the processing. But Carl, since you asked about this mic, I'm doing 4 to 6 inches away from the face. It's just an SM58 with a, I don't know, I think I replaced the foam inside the blast filter, but so I'm not even using anything on it.
There's no processing on that mic.
Let me check my channel strip just to see.
Oh, he's checking his channel strips.
Yeah. No, there's a noise gate on it, but it's not hitting the compressor.
Wow.
So here's with the gate off. Yeah, I have a couple of little dips in it. How does this change things?
Yeah, a bit more boomy.
Dramatically?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A bit more boomy.
Yeah.
What did you do just then?
So that I turned off the EQ, which has a dip around. There's a low, kind of 24-ish looking, or 12 dB per octave low that looks like it's around 30-ish, and then there's a bit of a dip. I think looks like about -2 or so at about 300 hertz. A little bit of a dip there, and then there's another dip someplace below 2K. Maybe like 1, yeah, maybe an octave down from that.
Wow.
So, yeah, just because partly the slap coming off my screen's like I'm in a parabolic reflector of sorts, and yeah, source matters. You know, I have a relatively not lively room. It's got a little bit of a reverb on it, but I do most of the, like for songs recording stuff goes either in the ISO booth, which has its own sound, or in another room off the that direction that has it's really lively. Like it's got a lot of ambience, but it's pretty diffuse. It's like maybe a 20 by 10 rectangular room, and I can put the mic in different places around that. But that's a long way around to getting to say that having a really dry, clear, upfront source versus an ambient, lively source can make a huge difference in what you're about to do with it, especially if the next thing in the chain happens to be compression. You're going to bring out some of that background noise. If the next thing in the chain happens to be distortion, you're certainly going to bring up any of the ambience and stuff that you've got on there.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
When you compress, do you pre-EQ before compression?
Both, definitely. In most cases, I'm going to have a couple of different types of EQ in different places. On a lead vocal, I'm probably going to slice off most of the unnecessary stuff at the bottom. Below 100, you start looking at what's there, and certainly below 50, you start. It's going to be a lot of air noises and plosives and stuff, rather than the richness of the voice that some of that comes from here. So that'll get off removed before the first compressor, just so it's not deflecting the detector circuits in that, and then. The style stuff, like the clarity, and if I'm going to DS, it comes before that compressor also, and then some EQ boosting, like for color and stuff, probably happens after that compressor.
Before the initial compression.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I don't want it to be. I don't want that to be deflecting the first shaping compressor.
And
so
what frequency did you DS?
I'm usually around between 6 and 8K. I'm kind of lispy. I have a bit of a sibilance on mine. And for other people, I just tune it by ear. I either do a peak and sweep or just look at the graphs. I use FabFilter's Pro DS mostly for that job, and it's just easy. Moving graph shows you what it's detecting and what it's attenuating. But there's definitely several more compressors after that. Like on the channel, there's probably a compressor doing long attack time, so it's not affecting the balance of the syllables, and a short-ish.
What do you call a long attack time?
30 milliseconds or longer. Really, so it's gentle no matter what ratio you're at. The first one might be down in the tens of milliseconds or even microseconds if there's something really spiky in there. I mean, you could just shave it off. But then the second one on like a 4-to-1 ratio with maybe a 30 millisecond attack slope, and the release is somewhat quicker, but maybe slower.
Quicker.
It could be up to a second on the really slow one. Like if I'm just doing it for like automatic gain writing, so I don't have to individually edit each syllable, like I could put it on a slow attack of 800 milliseconds or a second. But if it's just doing like normal duty compression, I would say down in the 300 milliseconds, 150 kind of range. And then the group also, if the lead vocal has a double, or if the rapper that I'm recording does ad libs or something, and they're all going through the same process, like they want to sound like they're coming from the same character, then that's also going to the vocal group, and that's got the other character EQs, the saturations, the the reverb for style, echo throws, I suppose, for tempo stuff, and that's also probably got compression on it, another 2-to-1, 4-to-1 ratio with the threshold down, so it's catching most of it and it's doing a little more gain control. And then definitely edit the clips. Like anytime you see a vocal that peaks up or comes down and it's like not gelling with the rest of the thing, I go and I adjust that, the gain of the actual thing that's feeding this entire chain that we're talking about. And if there's a pitch quantizing going on for T-Pain effect, that goes probably early on in the chain, someplace after one of the first compressors. If there's a really dry vocal, but I want it to have a room simulation because it suits the song, I'm going to put that maybe after the first compressor, before the first one, before the second one. So it's like a really tight, short, quiet room digital reverb that you throw on there, like either an impulse response of a good vocal space or algorithmic reverb. Then you're doubling and a little bit of chorus, maybe something that's got a modulation, pitch, and time to it. Man, that's like the start with, and then you can like turn those things off as you realize I just threw too much stuff on there. But that's kind of where I'd start.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Who else wants to talk about this? Eric, it's so good to see you again, man.
Hey man, it's good to be here. I sat down. I had like an hour or two to kill before we were doing the video, and I'm like, I gotta jump on Art of Rock. And then Diana started talking to me. I'm like, I gotta do it now. So, hey, Razzie, I love what you were talking about with the vocals. I missed probably a little bit of it. A lot of what you're saying is similar. We do our DAW's FL Studio, so there's a pretty kick-ass set of compressors in there with de-esser settings and all sorts of stuff. But I still use TDR. What is it called? TDR something. I'm trying to remember the name here. I can't remember, but it's a TDR something, and it has a great de-esser in it also. What I do is I'll do a compressor. I'll do the EQ first, like you said, get rid of the low end, below 50, below 100 or something, or maybe even up to 200 for vocals or maybe higher, and then above 15,000 or maybe even 12. And then I put the first compressor on it. But what I've learned over time is to get the compressors to do less work and put more compressors on it. And then one of the things I've also learned is I like doubling up the vocal. I like recording with the compressor, so it's not completely clean. I like putting it through a preamp with the compressor on it. And I mess with the attack and the release and can get some pretty cool effects. It's similar to doing it live. But whenever I end up adding the reverb or delay, what I like doing now, after years of not doing it, is putting those out to a different channel and then side chaining the main vocal against those, so they're only playing like towards the end of the vocal and they're not muddying up the vocal itself. And you get that cool room effect, you get that cool space. But sometimes I'll have to, if I use too many compressors and I like the sound too much, I'm trying to fix everything with like a de-esser or trying to go out and remove those semblances one at a time. I got a track coming out with their Prosecutor in a couple months, and the first verse is painful for me because there's only a kick drum and my S's, but the rest of the song, it sounds fine. It sounds like it's supposed to be part of it. So we've been debating on whether do we get rid of it in the first part or do we get rid of it? Don't know. It's always a tough choice. But you're right. Less is more sometimes too.
Thank you. Did you want to keep going, or
was that good?
That was good. Brilliant. Thank you, man. Raz,
Thanks.
What you got?
Yeah, sidechain ducking your long, way too present, dense reverbs and echoes is a great way of adding some motion and otherworldliness into your mix. It's very cool. I'm working on one right now, actually kind of in the mix. I finished all the tracking, and it's primary vocal lead, my own, and then doubles. And I know we're talking about processing, but another part of doing this convincingly is how much do you want your double tracked vocals to stray from the sound of the original, the primary. And I can't think of the example, but I know there's plenty of Bowie tracks where he does the double in loosely. He doesn't have it hew as closely for time and pitch to the original. and I'm trying to think of one where it's almost a second character, but it's still a vocal double, not a harmony or anything. There's some space to play in there. But the one, I don't know exactly, Eric, what made me think of this as you were saying it, but something you said did, probably in the de-essing, or the multiple stages versus doing it drastically with one stage of compression. I'm doing de-essing and then very aggressively increasing above 10K with a gentle slope of maybe 12 or more, 60 less 6 dB per octave. So in the upper air range, DS, boost the highs, then I'm using some clone of an Aphex exciter to mess with the phase, and you can tune how much of that comes in, and that tends to put weird ripples and peaks and presence into the top. So I'm going to pull up short of copping to exactly what track I'm completely imitating and ripping off and trying to get the sound of, but maybe when I finish it, I'll come to that. But so it's a stacked vocal with quiet, airy vocal, DS, crank the highs, Aphex type oral exciter after that, and then tons of reverb, which now I'm guess I'm going to duck now that you mention it. So.
Yeah, it's okay to rip it off, because even if you weren't doing it on purpose, you'd be doing it on accident.
I know.
It's just how it is. I'll also sometimes, especially when I'm working on remixes for other people, is I'll take the vocal and I'll sidechain it to the whole entire track after I redo the music and all of that to find that space in there, and that works really well. It's like a super easy, quick fix. It's like 20 or 30 EQs. It's crazy, but I got a preset for it, so it makes it super easy.
Awesome.
Carl, do you spend time editing your own vocals, or do you ever hand that off?
I don't hand anything at all off. I do absolutely everything. So the way I do it is I'm a really close mic guy. I'm maybe 2 inches and maybe 3. And it's funny that for me, the hardest thing is finding the character who's doing the vocal, is to find that character. And you listen to the vocals and they all sound the same, but there's just this thing that it's like, what is this character saying? What is this character doing? That I have trouble, like I have to nail that being. So once that's there, and that might take 12 takes of the first verse, before I do it. I'll do the vocals. The vocals I will 5 to 10 takes, and I usually comp the best parts, and they're usually in the last few takes. Sometimes it's the first take, but very rarely. Then once I do the verses, I'll go through and do the verses and build-ups. Then I do the choruses. I do each chorus. Every vocal is a fresh vocal. I never double up on vocals. Like, I never actually use the same slab twice. Unless it's a backing vocal, I might do that, because it doesn't matter. So once that's done, and I pull it into SoundForge, I suck out everything below 50. Even though the mic's got a roll-off at 80, I'll still suck out everything under 50. Normalize, I compress the WAV file itself, and then I noise reduce the WAV file, because there's always the hum of traffic and everything around here, and you can't get rid of it. Then in she goes, I comp it, and I really, if I have to pitch correct, I actually go into the actual waveforms. I don't have a pitch corrector plugin. I'll actually go in there. Just there's better control. And sometimes, like, I think it's the latest one. Oh, here's Adam. I think it's the latest track, actually. Pay the Butcher's Bill. Is the third is not major or minor. I'm sliding between them, and sometimes I'll hit the major, sometimes I'll hit the minor, and that was a conscious decision to go, I want it to be ambiguous. It just adds to the creepy sexiness of it. I don't do a lot of pitch correcting. It's just sometimes I knock things into place. I'll sometimes knock in the first chorus pretty hard, so it's like, this is what the chorus sounds like, then afterwards it's like, go crazy. Then I will output it to the modular, and I'll DS it first. I'll put a really slow, a light compression on it, and that light compression might be -8, 3-1, which isn't light compression at all, considering it's already compressed and it's normalized to 0 dB. So it's pretty fucking compressed. Maybe it's a bit less. Maybe it's -6 at 2, 2:1. I'll run it through. I've got this old graphic EQ. I run it through that. Then I run it through the hot glue, the Metasonics hot glue. I also put a noise, a de-esser. I got a gap between my teeth, and it will cut your head off at 5K. It's not sibilance. It's a whistle. And I have to manually go through my sibilants in the track, and I have to cut them out and drop them 6 dB for every single sibilance, every single one, for every single fucking track I've ever done. And if you want to make it absolutely nail, the sibilance is just before the beat, and the vowel hits the beat, and that will actually bang it, like bang it. It's great. So that goes through the graphic, then it goes into another compressor out of the graphic. It's an ACP88 Metasonic, not Metasonics, that would be awesome. Presonus. It's just a garden variety, nothing special, digital, whatever. Just to tighten it up just a tiny bit. And I can also drastically affect the volume as well, because modular needs loud volume. So it comes out of all that stuff, goes into the hot glue, and then it gets destroyed. Epically, overwhelmingly destroyed. And something I like doing right now, brand naming, because we're doing that. I recently got a Dopefer A188-2, and it's great. It is the best. It's a bucket brigade, analog bucket brigade, but it also choruses, obviously, and you can flange it, and you can have control over each step. I wish I had a camera I could show you right now how it's so good. So for each millisecond, you can control the left-right mix, and you can wind it in, and I'm talking like 500 or 500 buckets, 1,000, 2,000, 4,000 buckets. And then you can actually change the pitch of the overall thing, and you can either mix them in on the left and right channel independently, or mix them out. So you can suck that sound out of, the frequencies, and you control feedback. It's so good. It's so good. And then you can run a really gentle or fast LFO into it, ever so slightly wavering the actual overarching delay time. So as it's changing, everything is just, fuck, it's so good. And it's really cheap, just like everything else Dopefer. Really cheap, really good. Fucking awesome. And that thing's great, because if you come into the chorus, it can hit this big, it can go into that big, like, chorus sound. The hot glue is the best distortion. It's so good. It is transistor. It's not tube. I don't like tube. Just saying, I don't like tubes. I just got cancelled. Carl doesn't like tubes. What are you, a tubist? Anyway, like, I've got Metasonic stuff, and I've got other stuff, and I just don't like it. I just like transistors. And the amount of control on this thing is just stunning, because you control the compression, which is just destructive, and then you can control the distortion, it's the most ridiculous distortion I've ever heard in my life. It's crazy. Put kick drums through it. It's death. I also have the TC Electron thing as well, and it's great for fattening stuff up. So you have the distortion dead center, and you have the TC around you. It does have a built-in ducking thing for reverb and delay. I always have a super short delay on the voice to space it out, so it ducks. Actually, if I'm doing that, I don't really duck it much, but the reverb, I do duck that reverb just a little bit, like 6 dB or something, because it's bloody good. So, and I'm always looking for new things to, I never phase, I never flange, I never do that stuff, but that's more reason to do those things. And I was thinking recently, like, the first few Angelspit's albums had no reverb on them anywhere at all. Like, none, nothing, null, zilch, nothing. And that's been really interesting, that it's like, it's a defining a sound of a certain stage. And when you do that, it adds raw edge. And I'm not just talking about the vocals, I'm talking about everything. No reverb. None. It puts it there. Mistakes and all. There's nothing smooth. It's just terror. It's beautiful. Raz, hit me.
The grail, I suppose, the ultimate recorded vocal is the one that you get, and you don't have to go in and touch the clip gain on every single syllable. And maybe it's because somebody comped it really well. Maybe it's because it was performed in a certain way that it's appropriate. But I've actually got it down to not editing every sibilant at the top of every word. T's and S's are kind of in control if I get the mic placed right. I realize that's different for every vocal, and there's certainly ones where I have to do it. But it's an interesting, I'm confident that in 1968 they did not use that as the technique, editing the top of every T and S, and probably nor in 75, and maybe not even in 88. But the fact that we can do it, getting bogged down in the clip editing it's a long road. It can be. What I wanted to ask though, Carl, is can you talk more about the physicality of the vocal character that you're talking about? I have some thoughts and ideas about how that works.
What do you mean by physicality?
But with the voice and intention, are you doing different things and finding different postures in your small vocal muscles for delivery?
Not really. I did like vocals at uni. And I found that there is a stance that I take which will do everything. Like if it's a whisper, a yell, a sing, whatever, it's, feet about a foot apart, slightly bending your knees. Or actually, it's actually 1 foot in front of the other. It's the, what do they call it? It's the Henry Rollins stance. And I forgot what that's called. But I move my hands around a lot. I make sure you're not wearing earrings or jewelry or bracelets because they go jingle jangle. You don't want that. So is that what you mean? And it's so like I have an X on the floor, where the core of your body needs to be aligned to that X on the floor.
Yes, I am totally there for those parts of it, and I do the same with like actual body posture and stuff. But I was thinking more of like you mentioned specifically developing the character that the song is singing.
Oh, right.
And how does that manifest? Like, what do you do? Accent, volume, distortion, compression. The things that you do with your actual voice to get it on tape.
I think a lot of that starts in my head, and I need to be able to see a character sing it. I have to see the character, and I have to ask, what does that character sound like, and how does it make me feel? Like that is the quintessential part is what is the emotional response between that word of that take and that word of that take? And is it leading towards this thing? I will take it takes me 2 hours to put down a vocal, and it will take me 6 hours to comp it, because I am pedantic about the emotion that the voice is carrying. And I often put mistakes in. I often put things in because it shows vulnerability, and vulnerability is if you want absolute strength, put something vulnerable before it. Like if you want a loud clap, put silence before it. I'm not answering your question right now. I suck. Maybe because I don't fully understand it. I try and figure out what does the character look like in my head. What does it sound like?
That's I'm actually that does answer it in a lot of ways. I was kind of leading because I'm working on one myself that has, like, I've actually happens a lot. If I can jump in and step on what you were saying,
please.
Where it's either loud, it's either soft, it's either high pitch, it's low pitch, forced or relaxed, upfront or breathy, and these decisions in finding, they're not preconceived necessarily, or even if they are, sometimes I'll go into the track thinking it's going to be one way and completing a week of vocals, with imitating, something that I thought was the character. And then I find in one of the, outtakes, there's something much more subtle or much, thin, spidery delivery that's like, oh, what? I missed the entire trick. That's the way it should be. And I'll just redo it and start with that character and see where it goes.
Can I ask you, and in fact to everybody, and Adam, I do see your hand, so I want to get to you. This is something to think about, is how many vocal demo takes do you do? Like, not actual takes, but how many vocal demo versions of the track do you do before you belt it out?
Yeah, I'm gonna at least one, of course, but sometimes that demo vocal makes it all the way through. And it's hard to characterize a vocal as a performance because it's not. It's punches and stops and reconsiderings and re-records and comping multi-takes. But that session, let's say, that first demo session, sometimes makes it through all the way to the end. Like, yeah, that was good enough. Let's just fix the pitch on that one because it's stupid. Or, like, I changed the chord here, so let's use pitch editing. But, I mean, as often as that, there's a third complete version of the thing. Just like, this is not even related. Lyrics changed, melody changed. And to bring it home, sometimes the first demo serves to write the guitar part of the keyboard harmony or something, and they inform each other and change so much because of this new harmonic progression that I found that, that vocal, it's not going to be sung like that anymore. We've changed the feel, we've changed a couple of pitches, we've changed some lyrics, and so they're jamming back and forth as a solo, songwriter, recordist, practitioner, where the jam takes place over iterations of the vocal, so you end up with the fourth or fifth generation of the lead vocal.
That's awesome. Thank you. I'm going to throw it to Adam. I will say I do mine like 3 or 4 vocal takes, and the last one is the okay, let's fucking do it, and that's the final one. All of the other demo ones I do on a 58, but the final one gets done on the road on the like the nice condenser mic. And I do that on purpose because it's like I can't use those demos. I have to do it final. Adam, good to see you, man.
Sorry, I was late. Rozzy, you gave me a great piece of advice many years ago, which was to watch yourself sing it in the mirror. Like sing it to the mirror, watch yourself perform it, like watch how your mouth moves. Do it with big mouth movements and make it as extreme as you can to kind of find the voice in there. It was very good advice and very helpful to me. As you know, it took me many years to write my record because I had to learn how to do the music part of it to get the melodic ideas out of my head. So when I went into the actual recording process, I went at the microphone first before I wrote a lick of anything, not even the rhythms. I just sat it down with a click track and kind of roughed out the ideas and tried to find the pieces of things that went together that for the parts that weren't finished yet, if that makes sense. And then as I went into the recording process, the music writing process, I should say, the sequencing process, I used those as my scratch tracks and realized how absolutely awful they were right? And so as I wrote the music around it, I would do another scratch take and then another scratch take, so to speak. And then when I did my final comps, I probably did about 4 or 5 tracks for each song. Some of them I only did a couple of times, um, because I really didn't like, talking about going in and pulling out all the sibilants and stuff like that. I myself didn't want to spend a lot of time on that sort of thing. Like, so I really just kind of wanted to get the vocal takes done and let them be a little not quite right. And, with the, kind of like, well, this is what I would sound like if I was singing it live. And then of course live, the things that matter to me for processing is I like a doubling and I like a little bit of delay, to tail me off a bit, which so I use the TC Helicon. I've got the pedal version, and of the Voice Live, and as you said before, that has very nice ducking on the delays, so that so that when you finish your phrase, it gives you the bop 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 on the end without getting it all muddy during the delivery. Although I did not use that when I was recording the vocals, I just recorded the vocals naked, and did the doubling in the actual mix down. And I did comps for both the lead and the double. Usually the double was like the second best take at any point. But yeah, very, very little processing on my vocals. So one of the things that I'm kind of curious about, and I know I missed the beginning, but at some point, one of y'all is going to explain to me the distorted vocals thing, where it's like, even when you're talking on the mic, it sounds crazy distorted, like the aesthetic perfection sort of vocal thing. The new metal distortion kind of thing. I never really got that. It's not the kind of thing that I do, but I always find it kind of fascinating. So maybe somebody will explain that one to me at some point. But otherwise, thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Hey, what I want to do is, Adam, because distortion is huge. So what I want to do is I want to just finish this round, and then let's swim in the ocean of distortion. Let's swim in the ocean of distortion. That was my 80s hip track. It was huge in Belarus. Eric from Spank the Nun, by the way. You guys, if you get a chance, make sure that your names on this little thing says your band too. Adam from DJ Adam Bomb. Eric, go.
All right. So I usually do it in one take. And I made a mistake on this new album where I sent out the stems with the first take on it. Because for the previous album, I do it in one take. I chop it up. I go in and dub some stuff and take some second shots at it. And a lot of times it's the first take that makes it for me. If I don't like the first take or like the style, the vocals or anything, I'm like dead in the water. I got to put that song, bury it, and come back to it in months, and it may not even make it on the album at that point because I get stuck in the shitty first version I did. I can't get it out of my head. But what I started doing on this fourth album that we're putting down now is, since we started playing live a year and a half ago, last 2 years, we have a live studio and a recording studio. So instead of just doing everything in the recording studio, I do the first demo, kind of pass at it, maybe not real words, just sounds and feelings and stuff like that. Just really the cadence and the emotion of it and the vibe. And then now what I've done in this one is I go out to the live studio and I start singing it live, because what I've noticed over live, even our first couple albums, I start singing the songs differently and they tend to be better after singing them over and over and over again. And when I'm sitting in the studio, you just don't do that. You don't sit there and sing it 100 times, standing up, yelling, getting into it, sweating. It's just not the same vibe. So it's really worked well. And I started re-releasing some of the songs from the past because we've changed them so much vocally, that live, that they're way better. But it was interesting because I got a remix back from Comor Commando the other day, and I'm like, oh crap, that was the original track. And I'm like, this didn't even have words in it. It's just sounds. And some of them sound like words. Most of it does. Most people think it's words, and they just kind of put their own words in there. So it works. But now I'm redoing the vocals based on how we do it live with real words and having a new remix done. So there'll be 2 versions of that track. Yeah, Carl?
That's awesome. Next time I do a remix thing, I think I'm going to send out a different take.
Yeah.
That's
why
great.
not? Through a Kill Cult did it. They had multiple takes of their vocals on different songs for whatever reason. I think they were re-releasing them on different albums and different studio recordings. So getting the live studio set up, it started with streaming, working with Carl and helping in the background on the Angelspit stuff, working with Diana and Adam on some of their stuff, working with a bunch of these guys. And then now I've kind of got tired of doing streaming because we've been doing live and on stage, and so much more fun. And that has really added a different dynamic to this album because now we're bringing that vocal to it. So one of the other things, Carl turned me on to TC Helicon, one of his TC Helicons, literally still has some Angelspit settings on it, some A-sharp harmonies and whatnot. So we put our own harmonies in there, and this is going to segue into the next section. And we live, I only use that TC Helicon. I don't use it for recording. And so the chain for live is a preamp, a compressor, and a heavy compression. And it starts to give you that distortion and that beefy, thick vocal that you're talking about, Adam. And then we put it through the TC Helicon, add harmonizing, some short, quick delays, things like that. And then I'm running it also through a Boss SC50 pedal that is for vocals, so you don't have all the feedback and the noise and stuff. It has another harmonizer in it that I just lightly put on there, but it adds more beef to it. And then on the second pedal, I can activate delay and other effects and stuff, like when the chorus come in, maybe more harmonizer. But with all of that, the reason I was interested in the TC Helicon when I reached out to Carl about it was they were using something like that with Skinny Puppy because they're so heavily saturated live. They were using these kind of built-in harmonizers and stuff like that to reduce the feedback in the house. And when we get on stage, I mean, we sound mean as hell. I mean, we sound really tough, but you can still get almost a normal vocal out of it, a talking vocal out of it if you talk a certain way into the microphone. But the vocals are so clear. Like the sound guys at every show are like, I can turn your vocals up as high as I want. There's no feedback. Of course, we have in-ear monitors too, so we're not worried about the monitors on stage. But the thing we get from the sound guys at all these venues, the ones that know what they're doing, is they love how loud and clear the vocals are. They don't have to put their own preamps and compressors on them to make them sound good in the room.
Awesome, man. Thank you. And big hi to Rob, and thank you, Rob, for the backing vocals you gave me. Rob's having some really good things he's saying in the Instagram. I'm sorry, in YouTube. It mentioned some really interesting things about breathing, getting breathing right. Man, that's a big one. Okay, thank you very much, Eric. Rezi from Ushriek. Rezi, did you get to talk?
No, I just put my hand down preemptively because I heard you about to say my name.
Hand Down was the band I was in high school. We were awesome.
It's a preemptive hand job.
I think everybody was thinking, whoa, Carl was going somewhere, but he...
I don't have anything more to add. I think that kind of does it. Actually, Eric, you touched on a lot of the stuff that I was thinking of saying there. Touched on the hand job. Preemptively, too. It's very courteous. Everybody appreciates that.
Okay.
I do actually, before we veer off into distortion, if anybody wants to at least weigh in on their process with, do you end up with one punched up lead vocal track, or do you keep your takes comp from multiple takes?
I'm comp from multiple takes, and it's just one. And I never double my vocals. I used to, but I don't anymore since I'm using the TC and everything else because shit just gets too complicated. In build-ups and in choruses, I'll have multiple Carls. That's a terrifying thought going on. And also when you've got vocoders and everything, wow, we haven't even started on vocoders. It just needs to have one clear vocal. And that's the really cool thing about the TC is that I can have several other clones in there as well. And I can go through and they can stay in the same pitch or whatever it is that I do. But I can change the gender and or pitch. I rarely change the pitch. I often have them at different genders and I'll pass one that way, kind of like 50, 100. And that's a fantastic way to thicken things up. The problem with the TC Helicon is that there is a micro delay. So in recording, all I do is I just jut it the tiniest amount forward so it's right on top of me. So for me, it's only one. I'd love to hear what other people think. Thank you.
Yeah, so I do a comp that's pretty clean. I mean, it still has compressor on it with some EQ from the bottom end and the top end out of it. But like Carl said, I need that later for vocoder. I need that later to run into a reverb or delay. But then I usually run that comp into like a main vocal effects channel with all the stuff we were talking about earlier. I do put a pitch shifter on there every once in a while, and sometimes I'll go in and put things out of pitch on purpose so they have a cool effect on the runs and some of the things that are connecting to the next part. But yeah, generally it's a pretty clean comp.
Although sometimes it's nice to have like I do this thing I love on the track actually. Rob, help me out on. I do this thing called my roller derby cheerleading squad. And it's basically a whole bunch of people just going chanting along with it. And even in a situation, then I will cut out separate syllables of every single person so that they are right on it. And you pan them, you spray them out, and it's just the best thing ever. And thank you also, everybody. Max was on that one as well, and thank you, Max. But anyway, there you go. Blah, Eric.
So I was going to have one more thing. So I was thinking about sometimes I do a different set of vocals. If for some of the remixes, especially when I'm doing my own remix for my own songs, I will change the cadence of the vocals. And it's good to have that clean comp track to be able to edit the cadence of it. Because if I have a real cool beat, and maybe it sounds better on the half beat when it comes in, but then when I go to a 4 on the floor beat, it just sounds off. So I move everything up so it's on the downbeat. So that'll happen quite often.
Cool. Wow, we haven't got to distortion yet, FYI. Rezi, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I didn't expect those answers because I was thinking, literally, do you keep your multi-takes in take lanes or separate tracks or anything, which the DAW affords us the ability to do so, well, ad nauseum. You can keep a lot of stuff, sometimes without even noticing you're doing it. And I have made clients sad occasionally in recording when they realize I don't keep anything. And I'm like, no, we're getting the money vocal. We're getting the track. We're getting the take. You're going to give me the performance and we're going to punch it and you're going to get the parts that don't work and you're going to replace them. And that's just the way I've always worked, because keeping bad takes has never proven that useful. And in fact, I've found it to be a little bit often counterproductive to have them to search through and comp from. So
okay,
that's where I was going with
this
that.
This is now getting into therapy land, and that's okay. Eric, I'm going to go in to you after the group.
All right.
It's yours.
Oh, okay. My bad. So real quick, I do a similar thing where I put everything in one track and then I'll record it back down to a single track. And then when I'm pretty close to the end, I will go back and just get rid of all those other takes. There's some rare occasions when I'll keep them for different reasons, or I'm not sure, or like even if they're different types of vocals or whatnot. But yeah, it's always comping it down to one. It's just easier to work with later. And then if I want to edit and do some stuttering and do some, effects on that, it's just easier to have it all in one comp track that's just one straight wave file through the whole thing. And then if I end up going to a remix, it's so much easier just dropping that in later or bouncing that for stems for sure. Definitely, that would never make it to what anybody else ever sees. Out of my
Scratch vocal 1 through 5, just
yeah.
fold them up.
It's like I have a whole section. It's like you expand it. It's just like all these pieces. And 3 months later, when I open it, I can't even tell what's in there. It's just too much.
What I will say, thank you, is that I do keep all of the takes. I keep the master. Then I'll keep 2 other takes that, the 2 that didn't suck too badly. They usually become backing vocals in the choruses and stuff. I may need to run away in a bit. Heads up, Resi. We can keep talking about this, or we can move over to distortion. I guess it's about distortion. I got to tell you, I don't use a lot of distortion. Well, I do, but I don't. I know everyone looked at me. I don't absolutely cane the vocals, because when I cane the vocals, you can't understand the words anymore. And I just can't do that, because it's like, the words to me are so important. And wow, Eric, okay, I'm going to throw the floor open to this one, because I tried, I got all the little Boss lollies, because they look like little lollies, sweeties, the little DS1, nice and orange, and the overdrives are yellow, and they look like lollies. You don't have lollies, candy, they look like candy. And I just ran it through them, and it was like, nah, it's just too much. And plus there is you have to EQ so hard to get the cut your head off frequencies out of them, like that. That is burning into my 2K range right now, like 3K. It's terrible. There's a lot of work in like making vocals that are really offensive but not hurty, like getting rid of all the hurty frequencies. That's the really big, and that's why graphic EQs are great, because you can go through and you can just go 3K, blink. Also 300's also a pain in the ass. That's my thought on distortion. I love distortion. I don't rely on distortion. I rely on distortion. I rely heavily on distortion. Maybe I have a problem with distortion, but it just brings out the flavor. Know what I mean? Brings out the flavor. Eric, I'm going to throw this to you, and then Rezi, you're on standby, because I'm going to disappear probably. Eric, go.
Awesome. So the first album, lots of distortion. Second album, lots of distortion. Third album, less. Fourth, we're like, oh, wait, we can get all of this with compression and messing with attack and release and adding another, a whole bunch of compressors in line and limiters and exciters. So we started going down that path and just having a much more complicated vocal chain, because we had a lot more control. Because as we got more used to the recording, we found there's so little control over the distortion. It was just super difficult. We kept running into issues. We were spending tons of time taking out those frequencies and de-essing things and all of that stuff. And we found out, as we were getting better at compression, that we were really looking at minimal tracks. So we didn't have a lot of room to have that distortion in there too. When there's only a kick drum playing in the vocal, then really that distortion fails you big time. It's even harder because you have no reverb and other sounds to hide it behind. So we figured out how to do it we have no distortion anymore, unless it's on like a buried in the back kind of effect or something like that. But the distortion comes from the compression that we put on it and the exciters. And so we get distortion effects on there, but we have a lot more control over it.
Just to clarify, the word distortion means so many damn things that we're mostly talking about guitar pedal style clipping distortion, which is great on things that have fundamentals below 440, great on things that have some low frequency components and texture and timbre to grab onto. Not as effective for purer high tenors, alto voices that are just delivering nothing with rasp. It tends to just go into the like a kazoo, it's not. I've heard it attempted, and I've not heard it really succeed. But again, we're all saying I don't use much distortion anyhow, because there's so much you can do with the voice instrument that emulates clipping distortion. In fact, squaring off the tops of waves, adding harmonics, richness to the actual instrument. So I'm wondering, actually, Carl, do you want to jump in there?
Yes. That's actually a really good point because, then there's all these different types of distortion. There is distortion, then there's overdrive, then there's fuzz. Don't use fuzz on your voice. Oh, maybe you could. I don't know. I prefer overdrive. Like, if we want to get into, nitpicking. Wave shaping is interesting. But overdrive is good because it's warmer and it's less raspy, hurty. So... yeah, I totally agree with you. Actually, there's this very, very, very old plugin on Cubase called Quadrafuzz. Oh yeah, and I tracked it down, and I've got Quadrafuzz, and it's so awful. It's awesome because you can go into each. It's like a quadra. It's like a multi-band. It's a multi-band distortion where you can go into the different ones, and I've heard the modern ones, and they suck. And you can go into the areas and you can beef stuff up because that is the thing about distortion. The problem is distortion usually goes, I'm going to pick that frequency and that frequency because they're the loudest because everything's got a loud bit in it and they're the bits that are going to get distorted, which you might not really want, which is why we compress the crap out of things before they go into distortion. Ointment is one of the most horrible words in the world. I don't know why, but when I read the word ointment, it's like moist. Ointment.
I have to put
ointment.
a link in. My friend Jess has a gross words list. I'm going to put in the in the chat in a moment.
I want to start, besides Kittenhole, I want to start another band called Moist Ointment. It's like, it sounds really dirty, but it's like ointment's moist. But it sounds dirty. And it's just moist and ointment. And in case you're wondering, there's bullshit going on in the chats, as always. So that's what I think about stuff. Yeah. That was pointless, everything I just said. Go.
Other types of distortion, such as FM, wave shaping,
Ring modulating.
Yes, I was going to say extreme pitch shifts, but okay, pitch shifts with LFOs, absolutely. Anybody have perhaps an example of a non-electronic type of distortion or voice manipulation that they've applied to the signal chain? Something that involved the world, the physics.
I did.
I'm not surprised.
So when you're a kid, and this didn't turn out as good as I was hoping, when you're a kid, you know how you have one tin can and a fishing line and another tin can? I did that. And I ended up putting, it was a pain in the ass because, like, setting them up so they would hold was difficult. Keeping the string taut. I ended up putting Mezzo-Piezo transducer mics on them, little Mezzo mics on them. And even, no matter what I did, it sounded awful. But it was interesting to sit it in there as this high thing. Another really fun one is using springs. So you can do something similar to that, but instead of fishing line, use springs. Another really good one is using PVC drain pipes. So actually do the vocal where you're singing into a PVC pipe, which sounds great. It's a great idea. But this is the thing about this stuff is that, the actual real-world practicality of when you get it and it comes back and it's go, wow, man, this is a mess. Like, sonically, this is a disaster. And you have to process it so much. You have to EQ everything out of it. It's just pretty bad. One thing I have done is taken my phone with backing tracks on it and my little Zoom recorder, gone into a stairwell somewhere and do my Bowie's Heroes impersonation. And it's always very interesting. It's interesting. I did Maz, welcome. It's on the. I see your face, Maz. It's on the latest. Hold on, I'm sending Maz the Zoom link. Anyone's welcome to jump in. That's the Zoom. Come on in. I did sung a bunch of Ice Planet 9000 stuff in a garage. There's all this vocal in there, and this garage had the best reverb, as garages do. What's the collective noun of garages? A horde of garages?
It's not an animal. That's usually reserved for woodland creatures.
Says who? you know. Once upon a time, garages were free, or garage were free, and they would roam underground like moles.
I think it's a foible of garages.
A foible. I like it. And they would roam free, and now they're captive. They're all captive, and they can't escape. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to not answer your question. Mez, thank you very much for your vocals. They sounded great, by the way.
Of course.
Eric, I'm going to throw this over to you now because I'm not entertaining anymore.
You're always entertaining.
Thank you.
Even when you don't try. There you go.
Thank you?
I think so. I don't know. It sounded good. I meant it nicely. I just remember, like, a lot of times, like, you know, drinking a little bit too much whiskey, smoking some cigars after a show, like when we played a live show last week, wake up the next morning, have that gravelly, distorted kind of voice. Man, every time I wake up an hour or two earlier, not 4:30 like some rock stars here to record their album, but maybe 6. And I'll get in there and I'll start just like taking advantage of having that like gravelly voice and go put some track down. I usually have tracks that I'm waiting for that to happen. So there are sometimes it's intentional too. I'll go, okay, we need a vocal like that. We'll go out and have some shots of whiskey and smoke a cigar. And then we usually forget to go record after that. But the next morning we remember.
You know the story about John Lennon's Stand By Me?
No. So
what he did is he slept in the studio overnight. And when he got up, the first words to come out of his voice were was that take, the one take. And if you got it wrong, we're going to have to do it again tomorrow morning. I will have to sleep in the studio again tomorrow morning.
Maybe it's cold in there, you know?
Yeah, maybe. I'm sure it was made out of like gold and jewels and stuff.
Apples.
And apples. Yes. Maz, what you got? Sorry, Maz, yes.
Hi. So I want to know about live vocal processing. So I've briefly rented the Boss vocal processor, but when like it sounded okay in the sound check, and then went to use it and I had to cut it out because it was just all messed up.
Feedback?
So, yeah, I think it was feedback. I don't even know. But I don't have that anymore. So I'm looking at like, do I want to, like specifically for performing, next time, do I want to like have another vocal module? Do I want to try and run something into a laptop? Like, what do you guys do?
This is fantastic. Thank you so much for this question. Here's Raz.
I want to get in early so that everybody who has actually played live on a stage in the past decade and a half can chime in with something actually relevant and modern. But I found in the literally dozens of shows that I've played around this vast region, testing early and often in a loud environment so you can predict some of what your effects are going to do is crucial, of course. With, it's PA speakers or monitors, like the whole thing. Testing it with headphones isn't going to get you the telltale, oh, this one's problematic. And keeping it to just the necessary character effects that you're going to need. Not overthinking every single song. If you're using a local, the house sound operator, they're going to be willing and able to put the basics on it for you to get a good vocal sound. They do this every night, most of them. And if they're messing up, they're going to mess it up even worse if you try to give them your vocal effects rack. But I was doing it with house mic, house vocal chain, just do what you normally do, but also here's my effects, throw to this aux, and MIDI changes to the programs as it went through. I just had a multi-effects processor doing it that way, with no particular cues or anything. Just like, here's the tempo delay for this song, and it would advance through. I think that covers kind of directly what you're asking. It doesn't really answer it, so maybe people who actually do this now can say something about real effects processors that people actually use.
I love it, man. What you said was great. Eric, go.
All right, so we just played a show last week. So what we started, when we were relying on the house, going directly into the house, and we added a pedal or a rack system or something. But now what our setup is, I have a 6U unit, and I have it fully racked on the front and the back of the thing. It weighs like 70 pounds. It's super heavy, but it's super compact, and I can bring it in on the stage. And I have 2 outs for backing tracks and 2 outs for each vocal, my vocal and my brother's vocal. So we both equally sing. We sing on different songs, sing on songs together, but they're both main vocals. So the way we both run them is we have a wireless mic system, but it works with wired or wireless the same. We go into a preamp, and then that preamp, we go into a compressor, and both of us have a preamp. I think one of them is a PreSonus, the other one's a BM something, I forget what it is, but we have 2 different ones, but they have compressor and preamp built into them, so we get maximum kind of control. We can really beef up the vocals there without adding a lot of effects on them. And then I go into a TC Helicon. I think it's a VoiceWorks, I don't remember, but it's a rack mount one. I have a harmonizer, delay effect, some chorus, all of kind of the real effects on it. Then that goes out into a pedal, and I add some more to that, and then I can turn on effects. I can turn on more chorus for when I want the vocals to get bigger. Harmonizer, I can turn on delay, so that's a Boss VE50, and then that I feed to the house. And I have to be very clear. I'm like, hey, we're gonna feed you things. Don't put anything on anything, because they always want to add reverb and delay, especially when they're
fucking
super
delay. The worst delay.
Yeah, and they'll just add it and then go look at their phone and not pay attention for 2 songs, Yeah, we've been there. More than once, unfortunately. But so my brother, he goes through the same setup. He goes into a preamp compressor. It's a PreSonus one rack unit, comes back out, and he's going through a series of pedals that he can tweak and change the delay for the BPM and sync it up with the BPM on different songs. And he has a VoiceWorks foot pedal from TC Helicon, or it's not a VoiceWorks, but it's a TC Helicon foot pedal that he has each song programmed into to change the effects a little bit. And throughout the set, we play the songs in different orders all the time. We can play them anywhere we want, but we have it so it kind of ramps up some of the effects over time. But we don't get feedback. We don't. We have a super strong signal going to the house, so they basically have to turn off all their preamps and compressors and everything. But we have full control, and I control my setup through a Soundcraft U16 mixer, or Stagecraft U16, and I have all of my settings. So when I was at the venue last week, I just pulled up my iPad or my phone, and I could go in there and I could bring it down a little bit, or I could tweak it. But everything on my effects chain is that compressor is barely on. That preamp is barely on. That TC Helicon is barely on. And it's really having those gain control points and having them super low. But I get everything up to parity on the mixer. So I'm at 0 when I go in there, and I know what I have to change to get that live fixed and wrapped up super quick. I've seen so many people have trouble with vocals, especially when you were playing with Agrotech. We're not Agrotech, but we played with a number of Agrotech bands. They'll have so many things in the chain, and one thing goes out, you're done. And then realistically, if they had the same setup as I could, they could just do their quiet, low rasp, normal distorted human vocal in it, and it would sound great. So it's about having control. We also switched recently to in-ear monitors, so we don't have to deal with anything on the stage. And it's a quick setup, communication to the house, and making it super easy so they don't have to do much. And then picking the right tracks to sound check with that are going to represent kind of the gist of everything you're doing.
Brilliant, man. Thank you.
Before he wraps, could I just ask Eric, how many lines are you sending to front of house?
We're sending 2 for backing channel and two different vocals. And on the backing channel, okay, there's one more thing. We have a vocoder too. Totally missed that part. So I have a DJ controller that connects to a laptop, and I run the tracks through the DJ controller. And so I can stem things out. I can repeat things. Like we have this new song called Fuck the Apocalypse, and the whole crowd jumps up and down. We get into the crowd and we're getting people to yell into the mics. Probably not a great idea. We'll wipe them off real quick. Now we have to. But you get into the crowd, and I'll loop it and I'll build it up. And I'll loop it if they're really getting into it. But if they're not getting into it as much, I might cut it short. So I have all of those. I mix them myself. So I have like 8 or 10 channels I'm mixing for backing. Then I have a Novation, a Mini Nova, and I have a vocoder in that I use as backing for almost all of the tracks. So like when my brother's singing, I'm doing vocoder in the back through that. And it has a super clean robotic vocal that's really vocoder in there that's really easy to change live, and that it sounds great. It's super clear but super robotic at the same time. People can understand what I'm saying when I talk to them.
Thank you. I got a question here from Alex. Eric, do you have a crowd mic?
No, but we did think about that. Sometimes we just have our 2 mics. We switched to wireless recently just so we have more freedom. We can go about 100 feet into the crowd when we have the luxury of a crowd that we can get 100 feet into instead of 20 feet like a lot of times. But we just get in the moment, and then we think about it later, like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have done that. And it's usually the last song for the crowd, so we're just like, we're done at that point, you know.
Okay, thank you. My thoughts. Mez, first, buy an SM58, a Shure SM58. Buy it new, don't get a second-hand one. Write your name on it, paint it silver or something, so everybody knows it's your mic, because it's the first thing that's going to get lost or nicked. Second, and that's the mic you're always going to use, because you go to a venue and the sound person, sometimes the worst people you're going to meet in the whole world, who hate you and don't care, work sound. And they don't care so deeply. They just want to play their computer game and they don't want to be there. They just want to stare at their phone and they don't want to look at you. So your microphone won't smell like someone just sprayed Glen 20 into it. It's your microphone, always your microphone. It hasn't been dropped, destroyed, or ruined because it's your microphone. It still actually works because it's your microphone. Secondly, you might want to look into a brand we've been mentioning called TC Helicon. I believe they're Canadian, and they're bloody good. And there's a whole bunch of different things you can get. What I would be recommending is something super simple. It has compression on it, it has a delay on it, and it has a reverb on it, and it has a chorus on it. You may or may not want pitch shifting. If you're going to get distortion in there, you've got to be careful, because distortion is what's going to start feeding back. So is compression. You don't need to use very much compression. In fact, I would be suggesting minus 12 dB, 2:1, maybe 3:1. In a live situation, that's not too much compression. If it has MIDI, that's even better, because you can... oh, they're Danish. Excuse me, I didn't know that. They're Dutch. In that case, don't get them, because just like Austin Powers' father, I don't trust the Dutch. Just kidding. Whatever. It's going to start now. So yeah, get a TC Helicon. If you are doing a show with a MIDI controllable device like a laptop, try and get the laptop to control the TC via MIDI. It will make your life so much easier. Or you're just changing each, like you save it as a patch, like a synthesizer. And this patch has this much compression, this much delay, this much da-da-da-da-da. Each song you'll have a different song, so you're going to change it. Or you might do something crazy that you will set that to be a MIDI controllable thing. It might be worth not doing that and just changing it by hand if you don't want to worry about pedals and all that sort of thing. If you're absolutely serious about this, get in-ear monitors. Sure, do really good ones. There's a whole bunch of brands. Don't skimp on this. It's going to cost you $500 to $1,000 very easily, probably like $800. Don't get secondhand. Get them new. Because most of the feedback and the mess is going to be coming through your monitor. Your monitor and your microphone. That's where the problem is. So if you eliminate the monitor and you're using in-ear monitors that you are controlling, because there's a little volume knob on it, don't drive them hard because you will destroy your ears. There will be less feedback. There's going to be less all of this other stuff. But you're getting into commitment territory. Everything we've talked about here is $1,500. So it's like, I'm going to be doing a bunch of shows. And you might choose to do it. Hold on. I would advocate to get to inexpensive. Is that a brand, Alex? To get Alex is mentioning another brand besides the Shure SM58. If I got this right, called the KONDENSIERST. I'm going to go with a Shure, because once you've finished with the live show, you can take the Shure camping with you, and you can hammer a tent peg into the ground with the 58, and it'll still work. That's why I always go with Shure, because you can't break them. Maybe this brand is just, they're a condenser. No, we're not doing a condenser. We need a dynamic. This is a live dynamic thing. And when you start sending power to a dynamic mic in a live situation, that's problems. You may or may not want to get a wireless mic. That's up to you, but that's another grand expense. And the other thing about wireless stuff is that every time you go somewhere different, there's all of these different rules on what bandwidths you can and can't use. And you can, if you're using a really good one, then you have the ability to move those bandwidths slightly. But most of them are set and forget. So that's a thing. That's what I would be suggesting. Keep it as simple as you possibly can, because if something breaks or fucks up, you can just unplug it out of there, plug it into the desk, and go. That's what I think anyway. That's me. Adam. DJ Adam Bob, go.
Okay. So, every time you play in a different room, the effects are gonna sound a bit different when it blends into the natural acoustics of the room. And after you do the sound check and the room fills up with bodies, we're just bags of water, and so stuff changes again too. So sound checks are super useful, but they're not always, like, a lot of times by the time you get up on stage, like, people's ears are a little more cottoned from the bands before or from the DJ, and so everything has this tendency to get kind of gained up as you go along. Like Eric was talking about having the multiple points of gain staging along the way, which I totally agree with is the best way to get that clean. That's a heavy investment too. On the lighter side of investments, to follow up with some of the other great ideas that you've heard here, I'm totally behind the TC Electronics thing. I have a Voice Live. Mine is like the pedal version. It's got like a 3-button thing on it, and it was what is it called? Voice Live 2 or something like that. I don't know how available those are. When I got mine, they were getting harder to find. I don't know if there's a newer version of that, but I do know that TC also makes some individual pedals that you can chain to get some good effects out of that if you don't need the big deal. No, you don't like them, Carl? Okay, Carl says
Yeah,
no.
you know, you've got to get specific vocal things, and I think it's a great idea to have the one box with everything in it where you can save the presets. That's just my
I
theory.
I think I agree that that's the best solution. The Voice Live was the one, you know, it's got it all built in, and you can set the parameters, and you can scroll through your different uh, presets, saved settings by using the buttons. So if you're live, you don't have to reach down and turn the little knob to change the tempo and all that kind of crap, which is nice. And you can clone. So if you like a setting and you're going to use it for all your songs, like I do, or have, you know, small variations, you can go through it and just change the BPM, and then that way you have the same effect all the way through, but at different tempo settings, so your delays aren't chopping over each other and that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? For in-ear monitors, like I'm gonna say this: if you're playing bigger rooms, you're gonna want the better in-ear monitors, like the Shure. For the smaller rooms and for what I've been doing, what I was doing, let's face it, I'm not doing any live stuff. I have holes in my lungs right now, but I got the X Vive system from Sweetwater. It's XVIVE. And it's a simple mono in-ear, wireless in-ear. I mean, it's truly no frills, but it's also like really awesome bang for being like $350 for the set kind of thing. It's quite inexpensive and quite good for what I would say small stage use. Like, you know, most of the time you're not going 100 feet away from the stage, like, you know, into the crowd anyway. You know, that's as Eric was saying there before, you know, if you're not going that far from where you are, and especially if you're tied to a microphone cable anyway, these will get you there. And they certainly have enough volume, but you know, a lot of that has to do with what you get for the actual in-ear monitor, because the system itself, the X5 is like the transmitter receiver, and then you put the in-ear monitor itself, you know, the little ear pod in there. And so, you know, a lot of the quality that you get out of it comes from what you plug into it with the ear pod, and you can plug the Shure stuff into them. So
Good to know.
yeah,
Thank you.
my two cents is really just being like the millionth person to tell you to check out that TC Helicon stuff. And you know, the pedal's great if you don't want to do a whole like rack setup and stuff. You just want to carry it. And you know, I have mine in just a little one of those plastic guys like that you put microphones in, and like I said, it's great. And yeah, you can like drop it on, you know, if you go to karaoke night, you just drop that on the thing, plug into their thing, plug your mic, you know, take their mic off, plug their microphone into your Helicon, and then plug your microphone into the Helicon, and you're taking over karaoke night. I'm telling you.
Boom. If anyone's taking over karaoke night, I'm in. Thank you, Adam. Ivan, I want you to tell me about amazing stuff. Go.
I'm working on it. It's great that we're talking about vocals while I'm getting over a sinus infection that is currently trying to ram my molars out of my jaw. It hurts. So the Shure Beta 58A, great mic, and you know it's tough. Like you'd think that this was made by Nokia. You know, pound in railroad spikes with this thing, and it'll just keep working, which is good. TC Helicon Voice Works. You can get those on Reverb for a song because they're, you know, kind of old school but good. Also, there's MIDI ports in the back of that, so you can just use program changes to jump through your settings. So have a bunch of pre-saves and then use program changes to you know, switch from song to song. Just add a track on add a MIDI track onto the song, you know, in your DAW, and it's just there to do a program change on the device. So, you know, it takes care of those nightmares for you. Um, Meanwhile, I'm still hoping that eventually I can get a vocal chain that doesn't that I don't hate for myself.
Okay.
I've been having problems with that. Every time I try something, it's just like, wow, that sucks.
I think it's hard because so many people hate their voices. That's what I think. And that's another conversation.
That probably does not help.
No. And I feel that pain burning through my life all the time. Like, seriously, I do. But first, here's Eric.
I just did a show, Ivan, where I was like, I had all this ear compression and stuff, and it was nuts. I got nervous if I was going to be able to do the show or not, but having the ears actually made that completely non-existent. I think if I had to rely on the monitors and the sound guy, I would have had a hard time that night doing it. So another benefit of IEMs, and it was probably one of our best shows. I mean, it's just, I know people play sick and they end up doing these really great shows sometimes. The Shure we switched to is that new one that's like it's like the Beta 58 or the 58A or whatever. I think it's B58 is the wireless one, but it has the 58A in it. It has a finer cardial kind of like zone in it, so it picks up less background noise than the normal 58, and it's like 8 or 10 dB louder. So we had to turn like everything down in order when we started using that mic, had to redo the whole mix. I was really surprised. But once we got our gain staging right on that, I wouldn't go back. It's pretty amazing.
Can someone send me a link to that mic, please? Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I'll send you one right now. And then sound check, you mentioned, Adam. One of the things, if we get a lot of the problems I see happening for sound check, and I've only played live like 30 or 40 times, but is the more control we've gotten over our setup and the quality of what we're giving them, 2 outs for the backing, 2 outs for the vocals, and not relying on them. It doesn't matter how many people are in the room. It doesn't change that much after we get going, and we have a lot of control over it from the stage. And it's really us building that relationship with the sound guy as soon as we walk in there. My brother runs a theater for a living, multi-million-dollar theater, not quite an opera house, but it's a multi-million-dollar theater in Ventura, California, outside of LA. And he runs that whole thing, from the sound, from lights, everything. So when he goes in, his job is to build that relationship with the sound guy, so we sound good, and that sound guy will put a little bit more extra effort into it. But when we get that mix right in sound check, once we eliminated the monitors and the sound guy adding effects, we had a clear, great mix every time. We go out there on the wireless and stand out there and listen to it. At some point at the beginning of the show too, one of us will go out and make sure we hear it in the sound check, but we'll also go out during the first song and even walk up to the stage starting the first song so we can hear what it sounds like, to make sure it's what we want it to sound like when that room's full of people.
Thank you very much. And I just will point out, you'll notice something that's great green, by the way. Your hair looks bloody awesome. Love that green. Man, this looks awesome. Something that you'll notice is a common theme going on is taking as much power out of the hands of the sound person that you possibly can. Because sometimes you're going to meet people who are really competent and really amazing. But that's only sometimes. Most of the time, I shouldn't say most of the time, unfortunately, it does exist where sound people are going to ruin your show. And everything on the stage is going to ruin the show. And that's a great thing about in-ear monitors as well, is that when you put them in, you can't hear anything because they're stuck in your ear. They block out all the sound. And you're in this bubble of rock. And you're floating around in a bubble of rock. And all you can do is rock. And it's a very excellent thing. I'm going to copy and paste this for the Shure microphone into the conversations. Ivan, kill me.
Yeah, I've got thoughts on the house sound guys. At first, if you want to kind of trust them, because they're the guys that do know their room and they do know their PA. So you kind of have to appreciate them for that. At the same time, there's a lot of them, especially the older ones. Like they're trained to make sure the guitar sounds good. Game over, because that's what they do. Which is why, also, I am fairly certain that when you people up the room, the human bodies and the clothes, they're kind of there to absorb, like the spectrum of sound where vocals sit, and so between having a back of house guy doing the sound who's really good at making guitar sound good, and then adding all of the people. That's probably the reason that the vocals just kind of disappear in a badly managed room. Because I too many times where it's just like, I bet these vocals would be amazing if I could hear them, but they disappear because no effort is made to goose them back up. Because the guitars sound good, so this must be great. Also, I'm fairly certain that their leathery wings and forked tails kind of get in the way on occasion.
Yeah, and their attitude. Also, I put another link for the similar Beta 58A, but it's the not wireless version, which is only $170. Great sounding mic for $170. Ivan, I think, and you should carry a 58 around with you in your purse, because if someone I'm going to put one in my purse, because if I ever, you whack them with that microphone. And you put two of them together, and they become nunchucks.
Hey, I saw Susie Sue hit a guy in the audience from like 30 feet away with her microphone, and it was back in her hands.
You were in Boston.
Still singing. No, this was in Milwaukee.
That's her thing.
It is her thing. But, wow, I mean, just bam, right on the forehead.
Yeah,
knocked him right over, and it was just like nothing happened.
They actually learned that trick. Eric, I see you. I'm getting to you. They learned that trick. Have you ever seen the Taiwanese mudfisher guys when they put the hook on the thing and they swing it and they catch a fish like that? It's incredible. They learn it from them, where they'll go, drunk guy there, swing it around, hits him on the head in slow motion, back in their hand, and they keep singing seamlessly. It's and the mic doesn't get damaged at all. He'll probably lose a few teeth, or he'll have a grated blemish on his head. Blemish is another word. Moist blemish. Is there an ointment for moist blemishes?
No.
Yeah. Thank you. Eric, I'm going to throw it to you now.
That reminded me of so many things.
The moist blemish?
Not that part. We did a show a couple weeks ago in LA, and the sound guy was out the side of the stage. I don't fucking understand that. Saved my life. Why do you have a venue? But thanks for having us. Jesus, we were awesome. Figured out the problems. But
and then they asked for a free T-shirt.
Yeah, exactly. Asked. I'd say demanded. They would send a second guy, like a runner, out to listen to the sound. And the headliner, we were the second band, and the first guy was having trouble. He gave up on his vocals, and the headliner had maybe 10 songs, 6 of them no vocals, and he would talk and you could hear him, but you couldn't hear him singing. It was so bizarre, and everybody left. There was one person left after the third song, and I felt bad because I'm like, hey, everybody hang out, stay here. And they're like, man, we can't even hear this guy. We're leaving. And we got on stage. We'd had a great sound check, and it sounded great, but he was reusing tracks for the different bands and not setting things back to the right way or whatever, or keeping the right notes, taking a picture, whatever that method should be for that person. And we had our in-ears in, and we could hear ourselves fine. So we knew all of our shit worked. And that's a benefit of the in-ears, is if something's broken on our side, we know immediately that it's our problem. If something's broken on their side, we know immediately that it's their problem. So we have to also, you're in that rock bubble, like Carl was saying, and you have those in-ears and you're rocking out, but they can't hear your vocals because the sound guy didn't get the vocals out there. So we were, the first song, we were going to the sound guy and going, dude, you don't have our vocals coming out of the PA. And we could tell because people aren't reacting the right way. And so we go out there and we hear it and we're like, okay, we'll only hear music. And he's like, no, it's you guys. You don't have good batteries. You don't have this wireless. You don't have this. I'm like, okay, go through the list. Now go fix your shit. We can hear them. We know it's you. And he got it fixed within a couple minutes. And our whole, from then on, everything was perfect. Nobody else had a good night on the vocals, but we actually restarted that song. Since I have it on DJ controller, it just sounded like we were normally doing the song anyway, because I could mix it back in. But another time, we worked with the sound guy from Blondie. So every once in a while, you get a good sound guy, you get a good tech, you get to work with some amazing artists sometimes. And what I say is take advantage of that. We spent a bunch of time with him before the show and after. We were the only band. It was a private show. And we were doing like 2 sets of an hour and 20 minutes or an hour and 30 minutes or something like that. It was in a hotel room, carpeted, partitioned walls, horrible sound. And somehow he was able to get this killer sound out of 2 15s and 2 subs in this giant room that holds a few hundred people. And it's because he knows what he's doing and he can make it work with any system. But that's what he convinced us to get IEMs. He convinced us like on all these things that we needed to do. And that was part of the journey, is working with these guys, building a relationship with them, talking to them, and spending that time with them. We did another show with Piggy D from Rob Zombie. So we did a show with him like 6 months ago, and with his group, the Haxons, and we opened for him. So you get on stage and we're getting a 26-minute set instead of our normal hour or 45 minutes or whatever we normally do. And so we can't do a long opening set with the smoke and the drama and all that. We got to go right into a song. So we started our first song off with Dominate with the vocoder, and we just kick in with the beat. But when we're walking on stage, they told us right before that, oh, you don't get 36 minutes, you get 26 minutes. So I got to change the set list in my head while we're walking on stage, what we're going to play. First song's gone, we're going right into our first track. And so we walked out there and you see the sea of Rob Zombie shirts and Haxon shirts, just 100 people out there as far as we could see. And they're just standing there and we could hear them talking while we're getting on stage, because we didn't have any ears that day. If you have any ears, you're not going to hear them talking. But they're like, oh, where's the guitar? Where's the guitar player? What is this? What's this nonsense? Because they came to see a rock band. And we get on there. As soon as we get in the Dominate, everybody, boom, boom, was going right in, except like 2 guys that refused to get into it. So my brother focused the whole entire show, like singing in their faces. And eventually by then he got them singing. But again, what the experience was just, we had a great sound guy. We worked with, we talked a lot to Piggy D or Matt, is his real name. And he had a self-contained setup that he plugged in, and that's when we changed to that whole self-contained rack module. So what I'm saying is, when you have the chance to work with these guys that really got their shit down, and when they look at your stuff and they go, oh, everything's labeled right, everything's neat and tidy and plugged in, the sound guys and the techs see that, and they treat you differently. They have a different kind of respect. You're going to have a better show just because it looks more organized. We don't take more than 10 minutes to set up. You know, most of the time it's 5 minutes and getting off stage, and they let us play 5 or 10 minutes more in a lot of these venues because of that. But when those other bands see that, like Suicide Commando last week, they're like, oh man, you're doing this, you're doing that. Oh man, we're doing that too. We got a Helicon in there and a harmonizer. We're putting it in that chain. And we learned something from all of those, and we're always trying to take away something. So that was it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And also one more thing, if I can add to your shopping list, is 2 DI boxes. One for the vocals and one for your backing tracks. Do everything mono. You don't need to do it stereo live.
I think the TC Helicon I got from you requires a DI box because it's only 1/4 inch.
Yeah.
TSR. Yeah, we bring our own. You never have enough, and don't rely on the house.
Yes. Never rely on the house. Raz, hit me.
Eric has covered most of the angle that I was going to get up on, and so did Adam in the chat. There's a little bit of a relationship. There's a lot of hate on house sound guy, for a good reason too. I'm certainly familiar with the effect of showing up with a rented PA in Goth Night that doesn't have, a house system, and it's somebody who's not qualified to even operate the thing, and you just make do with what you've got. But the relationship between you and that person is still...
You showed up in my fucking living room and made do with what you got.
This is kind of what I'm getting at, I guess, is if you make things work and Mez, I'm getting back to what your question actually is in all of this. If you make your setup work without intervention, so that your input list is clear to whomever is doing it, your stage plot is drawn out and clear to whomever is operating it, and it's very obvious that my example is this guy standing over here, all those sounds, that's on this stereo pair. If somebody's making a sound over there, it's coming from there. If there's sounds coming from this side of the stage, it's on these lines. That's it. Microphone, it's obvious. It gives them something to actually do, but, bring the faders up to 0. That's your mix. If you want to, work on the vocals to make them sound good, please do. But even just that small amount of interaction, I think, it's enough to establish a little bit of a rapport with whomever is operating the sound in some way that you're going to get whatever they're capable of doing. And maybe they're not out to get you. Maybe they do suck. Maybe they're really, truly much more interested in playing phone games. But at least you'll have made it clear what's going on and they have a fighting chance. I sort of lost the plot, Mez, about what you were actually intending to do and what your goals were with this. I mean, it sounds like a relatively simple setup, and I'll let you take it from here, but vocals, backing, and vocal effects are your concerns. And what are you trying to do in this show with those, just to remind us?
So, basically, I'm finishing my year at school where it's mostly, focused on singer-songwriters. Very simplistic with gear. We had, for the technical side, we had, one course that was taught by a sound guy. That was, a really short course. And, but obviously, I'm surrounded by these singer-songwriters in this class, and they're just, writing with their guitar. But I want to, add more gear. I'd love to add vocal effects, definitely, and a synth or two, and, of course, I'd love to do lots of complicated stuff. I'm definitely not there, so I just want to, see what I can add and slowly get there while still keeping it simple enough. So I feel like my next step is gonna be to, because, I've done, last time I did something, it was basically just with a backing track and a keyboard. So I'd love to add in vocal effects.
Got it.
Yeah.
I think you've gotten the right advice then. If we skip all this stuff about what we've all done on stage with multiple lines and splitting off our wireless IEMs and everything, if you go,
for me to
yeah,
get that and see where I can go.
For my money, keeping it all on one computer that's going to crash and take down your whole set is the best way to go. Then you don't have to worry about bringing stuff, and you'll have something to talk about with the audience when it all goes haywire.
Because
back up on USB drive,
right?
And back up on your phone as well.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If you can, certainly. I'm pretty much done there, but having a little bit of mastery of your system and keeping it simple and going up to one pedal if it's a Helicon, which, again, I posted in the chat, TC, both TC Electronic and TC Helicon are both owned by Music Tribe now, so they might not be on the formulary anymore. I don't know how Carl feels about that, since it's his house, his rules.
Fell
That's all
about that shit, man. Anyway, look, moral of the story, thank you so much. Maz, keep it simple. Don't get complicated. If you want to get complicated, take a twig on the stage and put different lights onto that twig so the twig looks cool. But don't, what you should do is give the sound person two DIs, 2 lines. This is my vocal. Don't put delay on it. This is my music. Don't put delay on that. Because make it as simple as possible. Think if you were inebriated, and had jumped out of a plane without a parachute, and then you had to go, and mix a show, and you landed in a pool of whiskey, and then you had to go and mix a show after banging your head and you can't hear, and you don't care about life or anything at all anymore, and you hate everything in the world with unbridled passion, your life, because you used to be a musician too, and you can shred guitar, but you have to mix a show tonight, and you hate everything. Think about it like that. And then when you're finished, demand a shirt. Don't give them their shirt. They're going to say, I'll wear my shirt. Give me a shirt and I'll wear it and I'll advertise your band. Don't do it. Do they go to school or something where they learn these lines? Give me your CD and I'll play it between... And even though there's a DJ, I'll play it between bands. It's like, no, you won't. And Eric made a really wonderful thing where he said, be as nice as possible. I tried that. I need therapy for this. I tried that.
It's my brother's job. I can't do it.
I tried it for the longest time. I tried, and it's funny. They show videos of Elton John losing his shit to the sound guy, and Elton John, you horrible person, and I'm going, no, no, he should have had a machete in his piano, and he should have just drove his piano over there and hacked the guy up. Like, these people want to ruin your career, and they want you to sound bad, and they want you to hurt your ears and your throat. We did a show once. The day before we recorded fucking the vocals for an album, I won't mention what album, and the vocalist whose name I will not mention, they had the vocalist mic down. And I said, use my mic, stop yelling. But they didn't, because they couldn't hear, because no one was communicating to this vocalist who was gung-ho about doing a good show. And I gave them my mic, and I said, your mic is down, use my mic. And the vocalist lost their voice, and then they recorded an album with a husky voice. And I don't think anybody else can hear that. It just sounds like they were drinking whiskey, and it sounds great. But I can hear it and go, no. They ruined their voice. The whole takes on that album I weren't very happy with, because the sound guy was a bloody idiot. Was a fucking moron. And we had fans at the desk yelling at this person to turn up the vocals. So, and this is serious stuff, man. This is getting into injury and liability. And you might think that's drastic, but I have got so many stories of where it's not. Look at the technology industry that they are saying, here is stuff to take all of the hard... It's to take it out of the hands of that sound person because they're a fucking idiot. And I found that being nice to them up to a point's a really good thing. But then it's like, I've been nice to you for half an hour. I've been really nice to you and now you're looking at your phone and you're not doing your job. I've walked up to the desk before and I've pushed them out of the way and I've turned stuff up. I've done that. And I was lucky to have several big Angelspit fans around me that stopped them from punching me. But, yeah. Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm sorry. Alex, save me.
So first of all, sorry for the incoherent text in the chat. What I wanted to say is, me personally, I really hate the SM58, and I think there are much better mics out there, even by Shure. The first time I sang through one, I really didn't like my voice, and since I used other mics, I felt much more comfortable with my voice, because it cuts up at 15K or so, and over that there's almost nothing. I think whether you're using a dynamic or a condenser mic, which was the word that scrambled up my phone, sorry. I think there are much better mics out there. I mean, you're right that if you know how to use sound through SM58, you can adjust because everyone has one. But I think as a first mic, I would use something that sounds better. Second of all, the way I think many bands do it, especially metal bands, is they have a digital desk and a rack unit with several DI slots, and they put everything to the digital desk and the DIs, and give the DI to the desk person to the front of house, and have the other output of the DI go to their own digital mixer, and then there they mix their own in-ear sound.
Yes.
And the third thing is, I think the reason why some PA people are so bad at their job is because they wanted to be musicians themselves and got stuck as front of house because they didn't make it and they're bitter about it.
Yeah.
At least that's what I've heard.
That's the truth, man.
But there are also good ones, but they're like more about the craft.
Yeah, there are good ones. And it's funny, I've done some really small events where there's like 20, 30 people in this tiny pub, and the guy running it, he was amazing. And I did a show in Chicago, really small show, really small room. There was a girl mixing it. She was brilliant. I've done huge gigs, and they're awful. They're absolute, and maybe it's just because they don't know your band and they don't care because you're not the headliner. I had something really important and intellectual to say, but I don't remember what that was anymore. Yeah, hey man, whatever. The thing about the Shores, a lot of in-ears, by the way, they have a thing on it where you can actually change the mix of the incoming music and the incoming vocals. So you can do that. And if you want, and then they've got this fantastic thing where you can plug it through. So then once it's gone to you, it goes to the house. It's great. They're the Shores. They're great. Alex, I see your hand. I'm sorry, I got a bit carried away. I'm holding, I'm holding trauma. I think a lot of us are. Alex, I see.
Yeah, I researched in-ears a lot, and I think how people do it is they have like a stereo track that goes through the wireless system. And one channel is the instruments and one is their voice. And so by panning, they can adjust how much of their voice and how much of their in-ears they can have on their little receiver boxes.
Yes. And you don't even have to... It is a toggle switch. It is a rocker switch. Or on mine anyway. Because keep it mono. And then once it goes into the in-ear, that unaffected volume change then goes to the house. So you just get to rock it. Man, just keep it simple. Eric, this might be the last word because we're going to raid MTV very soon.
Right. Okay, mate.
That was the best Australian accent I've ever heard. That was great.
I'm going to stop while I'm ahead then. I was about
you
to say
were
something
ahead,
else, but,
then you
yeah.
opened your mouth.
Exactly.
That's great. Can you do a New Zealand accent as well, Eric?
Oh,
Eric.
No.
I was trying to remember that Flight of the Concourse show so I could repeat something. Or Jermaine or something. So.
No, you're going to do the whole thing in an Australian accent now. Go.
Oh, this is my real Australian accent. Not very good.
No, Eric. Australian accent.
Let me go get my dingo and the baby.
That's great.
It's more English.
No, you're gonna say it in an Australian accent. You want to start this? Let's go.
I think it's going UK. It's more prisoner sent to Australia accent.
There it is.
That's the real thing. All right. So what I was going to say real quick.
That doesn't sound Australian to me, Eric. Go Australian.
I can't do it.
Well, you started it. You dug the hole. Keep digging.
I need a TC Helicon Australian accent voice controller.
Luckily, they have one. Go on.
Yeah, there you go. So what I was going to say for Alex is with the in-ear monitors, I have a Stagecraft 16-channel mixer that I have on stage as part of my rack gear. So I use there's 4 auxiliaries. 2 auxiliaries go to the house for my mics. And then I have 2 main outs. That's all my backing tracks. So I mix everything myself. The other 2 auxiliary tracks go to my in-ears. So 1 to each in-ear. 1 to me, 1 to the other band member. And I can control the mix on each one of those auxiliaries separate. So I could get a totally different mix in each one of them. Or I could use those to send us both the same signal, stereo, if you want that width of field. But I do mono to each of us. And I can do vocals louder, other person's vocals louder. But I can also, with the change on the digital mixer, I can bypass all the effects in the in-ears, and the effects are only going to the house on the vocals. Or I can also have those effects, or I can dial down the effects on the mixer as well, because I have those running through a separate track for all of my vocals. I have a dry, I have it coming back out, getting the effects, and then I have a wet. And so I can mix those together for my in-ears if I want to, or for the house if I want to. And I can have them totally different for each in-ear and each output.
Brilliant, man. Thank you so much. If I may, so what I've learned is make it as simple as you possibly can. And my reason for making it as simple as possibly can is that there's a whole bunch of stuff that can't go wrong. And go out and buy yourself a gator, you know, the gator rack things that you hold the racks in, with 2 racks in it, maybe 3. And you put everything in that rack. And it's got to fit in there, because that rack will fit in the overhead luggage compartment of a plane. And that will fit as a suitcase, as a carry-on device on a plane. And if you can do that, you've just made your flights real cheap. So that's my highest recommendation, is keep it easy. And at this stage of my career of I've done at least 1 live show. And after doing that 1 live show, I've learned that simplify, minimize, fewer cables, fewer everything, easy. And that the rig that I have now, man, I wish I could have gone back in time and said, just get this. Just do that. I think I saw Alex's hand. I really want to raid, but Alex, did you want to?
I wanted to ask if you could put a link to the rec in the chat, but Eric already did a similar one. So, sort of.
Fantastic.
Already.
There it is. I'm going to throw this out here as well. Man, we're pimping Sweetwater today. Well, that's the 4U. I'd be suggesting a 2U or a 3U. Keep it small so it can go in an aeroplane's carry-on luggage.
Yeah, I upgraded the 6U down, trying to figure out how to go back to the 4U, because it's just too heavy anyway, especially if you try to add a drawer or too many preamps. But yeah, I'm looking at maybe 2Us now, so I can have both of those and put them on the plane.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've got this. Yeah, when I go live again, I've got to totally simplify everything. Oh my god! All right, you guys rock. Let's raid. We're gonna raid to MTV TV. And if you're bored, and if you want to help me out, do me a favor. Firstly, I'm trying to find the right thing. Join us for Art of Rock here again next Saturday. We might be talking about songwriting next Saturday. We'll see. And I would be greatly appreciative if you also joined Angelspit's Patreon, because it's good fun. It keeps me going, keeps all this craziness going. You rock. And thank you so much for joining me. I really enjoyed this. And everybody is fantastic. Everybody is having fun. Bye. Let's raid. Bye.